Well, welcome to another episode of the Daily Combat Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Stockbridge, and joining me to my right is Izzy Rossitano and Matt Hollywood Connolly. And, of course, Greg Hearne has also joined us here at the table. Thanks so much, Greg.
Hey, guys. How are we?
So we were just talking a little bit off air about the pain of losing. It's nothing that we get into combat sports for, but unfortunately it's something that you've got to endure. Greg, we touched on in our last episode, and for those people that are just tuning into this live stream or who are just listening to this episode for the very first time, check out our last episode. It will tell you all about Greg Hearne's story in combat sports. It's certainly one not to be missed. But Greg, you're telling us a little bit about that pain of losing yourself in those dark moments of the last 5 or so fights, and
starting to think that's why you guys kept me around. You want to talk about losing? Oh, we'll get the biggest loser in here. Here we are to sort it out. Obviously losing is a part of sport, and I think it certainly is very detrimental in combat sports. Like you either win or you lose. There's no. They do have draws occasionally, but most times that's it. There's the final cut,
and all the more brutal when it's a combat sport like MMA, for instance, as well. It's a lot more than just egos getting crushed when you lose.
Yeah, but hey, look, there's a pretty cliched saying, like lessons, not losses, and that's what it is. Like, if you can't ever see a way to improve yourself after a loss, well then obviously you're probably at the end of your rope. There's no way for you to come back. But if you there's always that little glimmer, that always little seed, that's something that can grow from a loss, and that's what you want to turn into your next victory. Like
you really have to turn inward and find that within yourself, don't you? You have to have that faith that there's a brighter day, and that you've got the power within you to overcome all that led to that loss in the first place, and analyse that, and it must run through your mind.
Well, fighting overall is a very individual sport. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like football or any combat sport is individual. Like, it's not like the traditional sports you play in Australia where someone else can carry the load for a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, old superstar's going to have 5 minutes and bring your team back up, and you're going to get the victory. You know what I mean? Like, you need to look very personal inside yourself and actually understand, well, fuck, like this is relying upon me.
Yeah.
Like, there are some other complexities to it, but you're the only ever person who's ever going to be able to tell you the truth. You know whether you've trained hard enough to win. If you're just getting punched that hard that you're going to be able to stand up, like with your arm, you know what I mean? Like, when your arm can give out, and you know personally when you've just stopped going, like, whereas you could have found that little bit extra, that you could have just dug that little bit deeper. Like, you're in control of that. Because you're the only person in your mind. Right,
Absolutely, yeah. That would be the worst thing to have lost because you gave up. If it would be, if a fight or an arm wrestle or any sort of position where you've lost, and it was like, well, I made that conscious decision during that event to quit, and that, I think for me would be devastating. It'd just be, it's not something you could easily get over. It'd be like, why did I get to that point and say no more? Was it that I wasn't disciplined enough? I wasn't strong enough? You'd have to go through those mental barriers and to find out what was the reason behind it. What can I do to make sure that next time, if I'm in that position, I don't say no more.
And have you had any losses that have hung with you?
Well,
I was going to ask that. I was like, what is everyone's worst loss on this table? I'd love to know. Let's start with Matt. Tell us.
Well, it was just on Sunday, just gone. So I had a match with a guy called Sledge, Matt Finocchi. I'd been building up to this match. He's ranked, third in the club. I'm ranked fifth. So it was like, reasonably close. And I was on a little bit of a win streak, feeling good, feeling like I had some momentum. And in training with Sledge, I'd been doing quite well and getting lots of pins on him and, feeling strong. And I was like, I'm going into this match, I think I can do this, But when I stepped onto the table, it was like going against a different person. Like he changed, like his face.
60% in training, 100% in competition.
I hate those people.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when he got on there, he was serious and he had that look, and it was like, oh.
I thought we were friends.
Yeah. There was no more playing around. And it was like, come on, no, let's go. And he was 3 times stronger than he was normally. and I lost like 3-0 and it wasn't close at all. And it was like instant pins. And it's hard to watch it back. I had to go and cut that footage later that night, and I was doing it like with one eye sort of looking at it. But yeah, that depression sort of fell in like for the next few days, and I still haven't been able to sort of look back and sort of recognize where I went wrong. I've just messaged him actually before we started tonight and said, well done, congratulations.
It took you 4 days.
That's not what you showed me. You're like, hope you die.
Yeah. I'll never talk to you again. Don't ever come back to the club. Yeah. I'll have to, when I can, get over it. Sort of look at, where did I go wrong and what things can I change to make sure that doesn't happen again, because it's not a good feeling like getting blown out of the water. It wasn't like I had an obvious moment where it was like, oh, this is the thing you did wrong, or you made this tactical error, or it was just like, you ready to go? Lose. Ready to go? Lose. Ready to go? Lose. Like, that sucked.
There's nothing to learn here other than I suck, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe that's
pretty much.
That's the big takeaway.
So,
Dave, you've got to be more constructive. Don't listen to that, Matt.
No, that's
No,
right.
I want to take Matt on myself soon. So
All right. It's a psychological warfare going on.
This is a demoralisation of Matt going on. Yeah.
But I think if you don't have that down, you're not going to have the up, and it's not going to be worth it to you. And it just sort of shows that this is something that I valued, something I really wanted. I wanted to earn that victory. I wanted to win. And it's, to lose is, it was important to me. It was like I wanted to win that. I had thought about it for weeks going up to it, had planned what I was going to do. I had my strategy, my game plan. It didn't work. So now I've got to rebuild, come back, try to re-engage and get better. But yeah, it's that real dip down now. So coming from a couple of wins where I was number 6, I beat number 5 in Tim Graham, which I didn't expect to do. And that was
He's probably the most experienced competitor in South Australia.
Yeah, so that was the big high. And then this is the big crash. So yeah, that's all right. I mean,
so where to next? What do you change? Do you change anything?
Nutrition.
Or is it... Yeah, that's right. Weight cutting. I think the funny thing with arm wrestling, it's like 90% is right in that setup. Where you set your hand and that first inch off that start is whether or not you will get the victory. And it's very rare that you will get a bit of a back and forth. Usually the person who gets what they want at the start will dominate and get that victory in a second. It's a flash, it's done. And the other person, if they don't know what the other person did to get that position, it's sort of like, how did I lose? Like, what did he do? And then if you're watching it back, this is why I always say to people, watch the footage, watch the videos. And I should take my own advice for that. But where was your hand? Where was his elbow? Where was his shoulder? Did you miss the start? Did it slip, go to straps? Are you not confident in straps? Maybe you need to work on that. So yeah, I've just got to look at what he did. I mean, he wrote back, this is like literally before we walked in here, I said, you felt 3 times stronger. Congratulations, well done. And he said, yeah, I just top rolled really hard into your fingers. And I was like, okay. Because it doesn't normally do that. It normally hooks. So I was not expecting that at all. I was definitely thought.
And could you feel that at the time? Because you don't, that seems like a surprise to you now.
It was a surprise. It was, yeah. I mean, he didn't hook, obviously, in the match. He top rolled. He did what he said he was going to do. He never does that in training. And so, yeah, it was... My game plan was built around what I knew that he's strong at and what he was probably going to do. But yeah, not having time to adjust because it's go and you're already 3/4 of the way down before you're like, oh, he's top rolling. But it's like doink, and you hit the pad and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, so that's one of the detriments of the sport and it can be frustrating with arm wrestling. Is like, you can do great in training and with slow pulls, and it's like, okay, you ready? Let's go.
Maybe just explain to people what a slow pull is as opposed to...
Sure. So with a proper competition match, you have a referee that lines your hands up, make sure that everything's even, which people manipulate the hell out of.
It's never even.
That's right. Yeah, but and then they'll take their hands off, say, ready, go. And then you go for it, and it's a match. And it's usually over in 1 second or 2 seconds at the most, really. And if you do get a bit of back and forth, that's where it's really exciting. In slow pulls, it's where you it's like a training session. So you'll get on the table with somebody and be like, Are you ready? Yeah. Oh, okay. Let's go. And then I might be wanting to work on my defense, so I might just wait for them to start pushing, and I would just sort of catch that and feel that.
So it's more like sparring.
Yeah, it's like that. And I might be working on certain things, and then we're going back and forth as to, well, I felt really like you were really strong here, or it felt like if you turned your wrist that way, and you're sort of trying to help each other to find out what's working, what isn't working. In a match, there's none of that. It's just this is the arm wrestle. It is the competition, and it's off that go mark. You've got your game plan, and it's hard to react to the other person if you didn't recognize what they were doing in their setup, which I didn't. Then and I think it just comes with the experience and time and knowing, I think he's going to try and press, the way he's got his shoulder, oh, okay, well, I've got to make sure I pull really hard back off the start. And this is all in, microseconds that you've got to recognize that instantly. And maybe they were faking you out. Maybe they were setting up like that, but really they were going to come back over the top. So there is that little gamesmanship side of it, which can be a difficult thing to overcome.
And for people who are interested in elite level arm wrestling, the gentleman that you competed against, who you lost to on Sunday night, will be featuring at the DFC at DFC 12 with Laz the Berserker Borta. That's right. So who had a fantastic, I think one of the most viewed matches that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Which was started off as a bit of a training pool and then has eventuated into this huge match, which is going to be taking place in front of over 1,000 fight fans there at the Adelaide Oval. So, which is fantastic for arm wrestling to be part of such a huge event as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really appreciate the opportunity to jump on board.
I know a guy who's involved in that.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. His name's Greg.
Oh, okay. I heard he came up with the name when he was driving around Melbourne, and it was
I heard that too.
You guys reading my mind?
Yeah. So Sledge is taking on Lass the Berserker in the matches that you were talking about. They've had two actually. These crazy training. It's like they were just on the table with each other. And it was back and forth.
Escalated quickly.
Back and forth, 100%. They were both going ballistic, and it went for about 45 seconds to a minute, which is unheard of really in arm wrestling. And it was really close back and forth. And they've done that twice. So to see the actual proper match where it's a ready-go competition start would be I'm not sure who's going to win. This is really close. They're both very, very close in their strength aspect. So
very contrasting styles.
Exactly. Yeah. So Lass is a top roller. Yeah. And Sledge is very strong in the hook, although he did beat me with the top roll. Yeah. But we've got on this Sunday, we've got the number 1 ranked guy versus the number 2 ranked guy in our club. Yeah. So Lass is number 2 ranked. He's taking on a guy called Tyrannosaurus Broad. Very strong in the hook position. Not a huge guy. He's probably 5'7", 5'9", something like that. 83 kilos, but
19-inch arms.
Yeah. Well, why is he called Tyrannosaurus?
His name's Taran.
Tyrannosaurus.
Because it's the stupid nickname that I come up with.
Matt bestows nicknames on people, and then they get stuck with it, even if they don't like it. They get stuck with it after that.
So what's yours?
Hollywood.
I got it. Yeah, I think Matt gave himself that nickname.
I was wondering how you got that nickname. I was wondering how he got that nickname.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah.
You like Hollywood?
Yeah, no, I did a lot of acting work, which should be unnamed, but yeah. Very deep down in the dark web, but no.
What's the you porn?
Yeah, the address, the OnlyFans. Yeah. No, it's fun. I mean, that's one of the marketing aspects that we tried to come up with, was to have nicknames for people. Yeah. So when I put these videos out on YouTube, people will recognize, this is Iron Man, this is the engineer, this is the Viking, this is Kratos, this is Hollywood. It's easier to remember than Dave, John, Barry, Small. Small. Small Paul.
No one wants to be that guy.
I swear, baby.
Yeah. So that sort of thing, and people have turned up to the club knowing the nicknames as opposed to knowing the actual person. So, you're Dynamite, aren't you? I was like, yeah. How did you know that? So,
how did you get involved in arm wrestling?
Yeah.
Because me and you had a bit of a relationship outside of this, and I never knew you'd be interested in arm wrestling.
No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we used to work security down at Marion Shopping Centre. Well, that was one of the nightclubs there. So, yeah, it was always sort of looking in bodybuilding and that sort of thing, and watching a lot of combat sports. Really interested in it. When the UFC came around, that became my number one thing. Nothing else was on the radar. It was all into UFC. But then with the arm wrestling stuff, I mean, I said this story last week, just briefly. So Devin Larratt, the Canadian current heavyweight champion, came through Adelaide and put on a seminar. I went along to that and got destroyed. I'd been watching arm wrestling on YouTube, and I'd seen sort of the main characters that had their bit of a following. So Devin was one of those guys, probably the number one in terms of popularity of YouTube. So when he was coming through Adelaide, it popped up on my Facebook. I'm like, I've got to go see this. This will be great. He was awesome. And then most of the guys that were at the Adelaide club were at that event. And they said, if you're interested, come along to the club. And so, started from that. And just it was sort of periodic to start with because you get beaten and you're like, I don't know if I want to go back. Your arms are just sore. It's just so different to lifting weights in the gym, where you're always doing, a biomechanical kind of, it's a curl or it's a, preacher curl or something like that. When you've got somebody hanging on your arm and your wrist is bent and so they're pushing back and forth, it's just completely different sort of arms.
It's like
muscle.
toothache, but in your arms for weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. Your wrists and everything. It's just different, it's just a different sort of feeling that you get for that training and a lot of joints kind of work in there as well. But knowing that there was different techniques and different strategies to the victory, and then sort of over time sort of developing a skill, and it's like, I feel like I'm getting somewhere with this, and then really enjoying it, and everyone at the club being really friendly and welcoming, and we were saying this last week, very humble, and because you lose, they were a beginner at the same time, so they would have lost thousands of matches leading into it. So to get to that point to say, you're welcome to come in and let's have an arm wrestle and that sort of thing. So there wasn't that ego.
Yeah.
And then as you improve, when new people come in, you're doing the same thing. You're letting them work, you're letting them pin you over and over, so they can get the idea of the techniques. It was just that sort of progressed. The guy who was running the club, Tim Graham, who's still involved, he had enough of sort of doing it, running all the events and planning everything. He asked if I wanted to step up and take it on, which I said that'd be awesome.
Beautiful.
So I've been making a few clips and YouTube stuff and putting stuff out there prior to that. But it was when that opportunity came up, I was like, awesome. I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to set some goals. We're going to come up with, the shirts, the Titans name, the logo and websites and nicknames and videos. And we were lucky enough to get onto the Apex event as well that Diamondback put on, held a tournament there, which was originally supposed to just be a club tournament. It was just, let's get everyone from the club to come along. We'd organised it for one of our nights down at the community centre. And then Dave's like, I've got us on the Apex card at the Nord Oval. It's going to be a few thousand people there. It's like, okay.
It certainly was a not a highlight, but like I'm not even going to say shock because that sounds really not bad. But I was really surprised at how well supported it was, and then even listening to you now talk about it, like, isn't it just two meatheads trying to arm wrestling? Like you guys have got strategies, you've got like terminology that I'm not really familiar with that. So it's really good, and it sounds really exciting. Like you've obviously got a lot of passion about it. You're trying to, it's good. Like I can certainly see why you're drawn towards it.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, well, that's one of the good things about it is that anybody can do it. It's just like you've got an arm, put your arm on the table, let's go. You don't.
You need just one arm.
Did you say anybody can do it?
Oh, that's right.
Well, Izzy did it.
I did.
Izzy's our women's champion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
First time arm wrestling in a competition. she won.
I'm very grateful. I was awarded a tremendous trophy. It's my
humongous.
favourite award
It's
ever.
humongous.
It's this big. I took it straight. I was recording that night in the music studio and I brought my trophy in with me and the producers loved it. It was a highlight, really.
Oh, it was fantastic.
And if it wasn't for Apex and having it there, because I'd also seen arm wrestling on YouTube, and I thought, well, how am I gonna do this? I remember seeing it, and I was like, well, that looks awesome one day. And my mum had always told me that my grandma was a really good arm wrestler, so I was always like, well, when that opportunity
in
comes,
the genes.
So it's a family tradition.
Family tradition, yeah, exactly.
You will arm wrestle.
Yeah, you too will. Yeah, fulfill the family destiny. And then I saw the Apex Festival, and I was like, oh, what can I do? I want to do something at this festival.
And you could have done a whole bunch of stuff, as it turns out.
Yeah, well, I did. I also entered the state freestyle wrestling championships.
I was going to say, how did that come about?
Well, let me tell you. So I got to just inform our listeners that I had the opportunity for my first ever freestyle amateur wrestle to be with a bronze Commonwealth Games medalist, none other than Taylor Ford, who's a beautiful person, absolutely awesome wrestler.
She's a beast.
She is, and I can tell you, before you were describing your fights and how, like, you know, and you were saying it as well, when you're wrestling, it might not look like it from the outside, but even when you're full on, like, pressing your body against someone else, it does take away your energy. And that being my first fight, I couldn't believe how much energy. I was like, I was needing oxygen when all I was trying to do was take down my opponent, Taylor. And I think, you know, definitely in terms of Greg mentioned in the previous podcast about when he's wrestled someone who's been a friend, how it's a very interesting experience because you are in a fight or a wrestle. You want to take down that person, but at the same time they're your friend. And you're like, all right, let's do it now. And there were definitely moments where I could tell, you know, there was one moment I think my foot slipped or something and she could have definitely thrown me, probably backflipped me 3 times in the air and then smashed me on the ground, but she chose not to. So
that's nice.
Grateful for that. Yeah.
So what kind of preparation did you have for that? Because you're boxing at the moment. You're on the water. Just last episode, we were talking about you preparing for the Olympics, and then, you know, just as a sideline, you decide to come up against elite wrestlers.
Yeah, well, the opportunity presented itself, Dave. But look, if I'm perfectly honest, the preparation I really had was just wrestling my siblings at home throughout my childhood.
Okay.
And what was your record?
I'd rather not mention it on air. I don't think I ever won. But I did watch a lot of videos, yes. I didn't have the opportunity to actually practice at all. But I did do a fair bit of grappling in 2015. I did by a fair bit, I mean 3 sessions.
So a fair bit is a definitive term. Depends on what you've done previously, which is 0. So
exactly. I did 3 1-hour sessions of
300% more than you've ever done in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But it's funny. There you go. That was my wrestling career. So
is that the end of the wrestling career, or is there still a future?
Well, I'm hoping for a rematch against Taylor.
So how did it go? How did things end up with Taylor?
Well, I think I scored 2 points or 3 points, which I was quite happy with.
Yeah.
Actually,
Taylor stepped off the mat to get a drink.
Brutal. It didn't quite happen like that. Let me inform you guys. I was really surprised. I mean, it was really fun. But just, I did get, I think 2 or 3, I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
And it was just, how did I find it? First off, it was awesome. It was so much more fun. I was scared shitless. Like, Taylor Ford is amazing. Like, she's very good. And I am a beginner. So I was scared shitless. I didn't want to do it, but she didn't have anyone else to wrestle. There wasn't a single other female wrestler. Yeah, there was no one else to do it. So I thought I might die.
Not surprised when Taylor's registering.
And actually, funnily enough, I had a masseuse tell me, a sports masseuse, she's like, oh yeah, I love wrestling, I used to do it, and she's like, but then this awesome girl came from New Zealand and I was too scared to wrestle anymore. I'm like, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Wow.
So she's got that effect on people. It was just such a really fun experience.
So was it you just really filling in to help a friend?
It was. It pretty much was. I mean, it was the state championships. And it was important, I think, for rankings and so on. But I was even warned against it. So my sister, who is an experienced judoka, She told me, she's like, don't do it. Like, do you realize? And then she picked me up on her shoulder in one move and said, she can throw you down like this and you can get this issue. You can break your neck. You can do this, So she's like, are you sure you want to do this?
Fake news.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I should have spoken to Greg before. Maybe you would have encouraged me. Yeah. But no, my sister said, literally, she's like, sent me a big long text, like, be careful, like, you might die. So I was scared. So going, like, I've studied sports psychology and, going into that wrestle, I thought I was going to die. But I'm like, I was pale. I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. But then, I love actually really. I'd love to do freestyle wrestling. At the moment, I don't have time because I'm doing boxing, but I really enjoyed it. If there was an opportunity in South Australia, if there were plenty of girls and it was a sport I could,
sink your teeth into,
really do. I'd love to do it, like, because it was really interesting experience. Like I love how you start, like, the stance when you begin is pretty fun. Yeah.
Was she aware that you were a beginner, that you had never done it before?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so she sort of.
She definitely. She definitely could have killed me. Definitely, absolutely, absolutely. Good. She could have destroyed me, but she was very generous.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it shows some good personality.
She let me have fun. She did. She's an amazing person.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what we try to do with, like, if we have the tournament. So if somebody's a beginner or they've never done it before, we'll actually say to the other guys, like, this guy's never tried. Don't smash him, like, just, nice.
That's what they were saying.
Nice.
That's what they're saying about you.
Yeah,
like,
I was just thinking that.
Before, just go
you
easy.
Didn't say that before me, did you?
Yeah.
No,
that's not how I got that trophy, was it? I have to return it now.
Because the last thing you want to do is have somebody step up for the very first time and just get an injury or, just get obliterated and be like, I will never do
demoralized.
That again.
Yeah. Then you want to see him back next week.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's great that she did that. So freestyle wrestling, the Apex tournament, you've stepped onto the mat and they said, okay, go. Did you know what you were
Did you know what to do? Or did you
okay.
have the basics? Or?
Well, two things. First off, I have to point out that one of my favorite things about wrestling is you get to wear the same uniform that I used to do canoeing, which is like, we called it a zoot suit. It's pretty much a unitard. So I got to pull out my old Australian zoot suit and wear that again. So that made me feel kind of confident. That was my little confidence booster. But no, 5 minutes beforehand, I had a wrestling masterclass from Taylor, who is a great coach.
Yeah.
Sure, she might coach online if anyone listening needs some wrestling help.
She did some coaching down at our club for a little while. She's very, very knowledgeable. So
very knowledgeable and also a great soul, really. Yeah. So I had some practice. I think I did some flip thing and she showed me how to fall.
Okay.
And that was.
She's like, you were going to need this. What? Just learn.
Yeah, pretty much. So I had a bit of a pointer, which made me feel pretty, like, a bit more confident, like like she's gonna. She kept telling me, don't worry, I'm gonna be nice. But in my head, I'm like, okay, there's two ways that can go. She's either like meaning that, or because I know, like, and this is what my sister had said to me too, is like, if I was boxing a beginner, an absolute beginner. I could say, oh, yeah, of course I'm going to take it easy on them. But then once we're in the ring, I might just be like, oh, hell nah. Like, this is
They're
time.
not going to know the difference.
Ding, 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 let's go, Like,
yeah, for sure. That's right.
But she was, definitely. So what happened? So, stepped on the mat and then I think, I can't really remember, it was a blur, but the first thing I remember is within like 20 seconds, gassing out.
All right.
I couldn't believe how much cardio was involved. Like, it's not like you're going for a run, but it feels like you are. That's definitely for anyone who hasn't experienced grappling or wrestling. I was really surprised by that, like massively. I didn't expect that.
It's like this isometrics, like you just got that constant tension rather than
we're like sweating. We're just like grappling each other, like, and I think I probably had a bit of like 2 or 3 kilos weight advantage on her. I think at that point as well too.
Yeah.
So we're just like doing that and just like full on getting tired from doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, all credit to you for jumping on the mat.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, well done.
It was good fun. It was great fun. I think I got a little silver medal too. So.
You got the silver medal.
Yeah,
so
I got all the medal that day.
I'll tell you what, all the
I haven't picked it up yet though, because you know why I missed out on the medal presentations, because I was doing the arm wrestling.
You're too busy winning over at the arm wrestling table. Yeah, that trophy was humongous that we.
I'll bring it in next time.
So I think the listeners want to see it.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a really interesting story. You're quite the sporting polymath. Like, you'll literally give anything a go.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what kind of skill set were you bringing to wrestling or bringing to arm wrestling? You given that you technically have no knowledge of either of the sports, what gives you that level of confidence to feel like I can give this a go?
Well, I think at this stage, I've now considered myself a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me, I think I even got a DM today, what sport have you chosen? And I had a comment the other day, like, your sports cupboard must be massive. And I'm like, no, you can't fit like a boat and a sled and everything in a car. I don't have a cupboard. Well, I think a lot of things to me is a lot about your mindset. That's huge for me. I really think a lot of the time it's about what's going on inside the mind, and that's what wins, especially to me in combat sports. That must be pretty big and that's why I love them more than anything, is I've always thought, and recently I had this experience which meant the world to me. Would have loved to have really smashed it. Can't talk about it yet, but when I can. And what let me down then was my physicality. I've always felt like my mind is my strongest weapon. And my body has always been, look, let's be honest, my cardio has always been what kind of stops me actually in everything in life. So for me, to see an opportunity, like I've always wanted to try arm wrestling. I've always liked the look of wrestling as well. I've always admired it. To me, I just think, oh, what an awesome opportunity. I get to have a go at that. And that's what makes me want to do it. And in terms of my confidence, I mean, going up against Taylor was very scary. I wouldn't say I was confident, but I think I'm pretty good at kind of getting in the zone. I'm a big Rocky fan. Just listen to Muhammad Ali's speeches or Rocky's speeches, and that gets me.
Jake Paul's speeches.
I swear to God, there's a limit. You reach 5, I'm going to throw this water bottle. So I think that's it. But what about you guys? If you saw that opportunity, would you give it a go as well?
No, I wouldn't have.
Why not?
It would have hurt.
Have you seen his suits?
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful, very nice.
Well, Dave got onto the arm wrestling table, just out of an interest. You actually owned an arm wrestling table.
You owned one
before you come on to the club already.
Yeah. I wanted to give it a go first, and I arm wrestled all my friends who didn't know.
I need to practice.
Yes. Well, one of those guys who just has everything he doesn't need.
Like a treadmill. I had the table, and I had it at work because I didn't have people at home that I could say, get my wife on the table or something. So I'd wait for clients and people.
Sorry, what was that, Dave, about getting the wife on the table?
She wouldn't get on the table. And so I'd lure clients and anybody who happened to be around the office to, let's have a go. And all I was doing in my mind was like, I wanted to find out what the guys on YouTube were doing.
Yeah. It's all YouTube. This is where arm wrestling lives.
It's the gateway drug to arm wrestling. And so I was just trying to get a bit of a feel for it. And then it wasn't until and we'll talk about that. There's an app which is basically I was going to say it's basically Grindr for arm wrestlers. As you mentioned Grindr just a little bit earlier.
It's exactly the same.
It's not exactly the same.
Is there consequences if you lose? Because that sounds like it could be Grindr.
There's more table time. There's this app, and on this app there was a couple of guys. Taryn was one of them. So he said, come around to my place and we've got a table here.
Wait, no, we need to pause this. So you're telling me I can go into the App Store and download an app that partners me up with arm wrestling matches?
Exactly. It's called...
Where you get invited to strangers' houses to wrestle.
Yeah. We're there and their other arm wrestling friends are waiting for you at the top of the driveway. So, I went to a strange young man's house and he had his table at the top of the driveway and Leon was there as well. And so we met each other there and started arm wrestling. And I didn't know I was arm wrestling the number one guy in the rankings or anything like that. And, it was this little young guy, and I consider myself a pretty strapping, strong kind of character, and my arm just kept going over, and then the second time I went, I ripped my distal tendon. That wasn't Taryn's fault, that was Leon. Well, not fault, we should say fault, but but I loved it, and it was enough to get me back, and I can't can't remember exactly what the point of all of that was, but nonetheless, you know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the app.
Your
if
first
anyone-
arm wrestling,
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much how
right.
you got into arm wrestling.
So that was it, you know. And since I've probably acknowledged at this point, I'm not going to be an elite level arm wrestler. But I love the culture, I love the sport, the people that are involved. It's surprisingly like super family friendly, as you were mentioning about MMA. Like I think people have like a certain perception when it does come to combat sports about the people that are in the sports, when in reality, you know, those people have a great deal of humility. They're normally really accommodating, it's super welcoming, and want you to be part of the community as much as you want to be a part of it. And so that's what I've enjoyed so far about the arm wrestling community, and what I found in combat sports and strength sports, just generally speaking, as well.
Exactly.
It's a quiet confidence that you've got in your own ability, whether it's like when you know you can take care of yourself. So typically I tend to find that people are more accommodating, as you said. Like they're more generous, they're more willing to help people, because it's like, well, I can give this to you. You can't take it from me. Like I can give it to you. And for those people who put that front up where they are worried about people taking the shit, is generally because I can't stop someone from doing this.
Yeah.
So I better act pretty big. I'm going to fall back into the nature sort of style of, big is better. You know what I mean? Like no one messes with the elephant because it's the biggest thing in the jungle.
Yes.
You know? Whereas, you know, like that, and that's what I feel like people tend to try to promote. Like, the bigger I get or the scarier I look, people are going to leave me alone.
Yeah.
But those guys who you should really be worried about.
Yeah.
Are the ones that are almost like, hey, come here, take my stuff. I'm like, mate, it's fine, take it, it's all good. Like, you know, because they know they've got the innate ability to take it back if they want.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Look, and I even think that might have been, not to be too introspective, but when I consider why it is that I started doing weight training and that type of thing, very definitely I grew up in the northern suburbs of Adelaide, very, very working class. We grew up quite poor. You're in a particular type of environment where, you know, people are trying to, you know, assert themselves, and that bully mentality is prevalent. And so, you know, there's a couple of things you can do. You know, you can become the victim, or you can try and, you know, equip yourself with the tools so that you can make your way through life. And, you know, for some that's, you know, picking up some fighting skills. Others it's, you know, getting stronger in the gym. And, you know, but I think all of that is just part of that journey of, you know, once you've accumulated a certain level of physicality and strength and confidence, then you look for the most appropriate ways to dedicate that. And, you know, you see that with a lot of athletes, especially strength and combat sports athletes. They get to a certain point of their career and it's all about giving back. And it's all about the legacy. They really think about the impact of what it is that, not what they're doing when they're punching people in the face, but in terms of their ethic and how they hold themselves and how other people perceive them, starts to become really fundamental to their behaviour.
Absolutely. I mean, you would have experienced this in the security industry as well. It's funny that it's called the security industry, but it's full of insecure people.
Really? Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's interesting.
For sure. You know, the look you were talking about just then, where it's like, I've got to look really big and tough the entire time. And I just imagine those people that when they get home, they just be like, relax now.
Oh, I do that anyway. That's exactly what I do when I sit on the couch.
Yeah, because it's a front that they're trying to present to the world. Like, I'm big and strong and tough, don't mess with me, you know, the entire time. But it's sort of, as you said, you know, for people that have experienced adversity, that have gone through, you know, with combat or, you know, with difficult challenges and gotten through them, they're the people that are friendly, they're happy to help. That, you know, they're not there going, I must tell everyone how strong and big and tough I am, and, you know, I will get as many tattoos and shave my head and get this and, you know, look like a staunch.
I've got tattoos and shave my head. But I was always more worried about the person who was, you know, quietly confident than the bigger guy. Like, you know, the bigger guy, you know, the guy who's quiet and confident, he generally knows something I don't.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. You got to be careful of that, and you can see him as well. Like, you know, standing in the crowd, and one guy's just sort of being quiet, and he's just calculating, and it's like, oh, we've got to keep an eye on that guy because he's got to do something. But yeah, that welcoming community is so important, and I think it only comes from, you know, the people that have been there have been destroyed, lost, you know, devastated, whatever, for, you know, hundreds of times, and continued to come back and then gotten better from that and gotten that growth. And then to be able to see a new person come into it, and it's like, well, I have experienced the point at where you are, you know, where you are at the moment. You're a beginner, you don't know the techniques, this, that, whatever. So rather than just beating you. I'm going to help you get better. It's one of those things with bullying. I think, going through that, what you were saying, northern suburbs and that sort of thing. I had a similar sort of thing. Like in high school, was very bullied and had a lot of negative experiences, which sort of drove me on for years afterwards. Probably up till I was maybe 30, where it was just every workout, every time I stepped foot into the gym, I was imagining those moments and how much I could sort of fuel those workouts with that anger and that rage and that I guess pain, like the difficulty of having those experiences and then trying to turn it into something positive. But stepping into a place where now with arm wrestling, where you can have people that if you have an ego and you have like an insecurity and you're coming in to beat everybody and try to prove yourself, it's not going to work, and you'll either change your mind or you'll just quit and go somewhere else and try it somewhere else. But thankfully it's sort of like one of those things where you'll get beaten enough and go, okay, but everyone's really nice and they're friendly and I'm losing, but I'm
growing.
I'm getting better,
Yeah.
and I'm feeling stronger. And then as you progress, you're like, I'm stronger than this guy now, and I feel like I'm getting the understanding behind what I'm doing. And over time, for me, it's 2.5 years, but feeling quite confident, and then not having that difficulty of trying to put on a false persona of I'm really big and strong. Like, no one cares, mate.
That's what losses teach you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's an important lesson. Like, as a parent as well. Like, you need to teach your kid about losses. Like, particularly the security industry to me really highlighted to how parenting had sort of changed and morphed. You know what I mean? Like, when you got like a young 17, 18-year-old boy full of piss and vinegar screaming in your face like, you can't touch me, and it's like, why? What's stopping me? Like, I'm stopping me at this point in time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's again to highlight the benefits of combat sports. Like, these people are welcoming because you are going to lose, right? And through loss comes growth, and through growth, comes development, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how obviously you'll lose and then you'll get better and you'll get better. Like, nobody likes to lose, right? But it's such a common occurrence in our life. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all had that job we've applied for that we didn't get, right? And then how does that get handled when you don't get that job? Does that person then like ring you and go, "Oi, you shit," and then hang up the phone? No, they don't. They normally, hey, look, I'd like you to work on this, or there was a bit more successful candidate at this point in time, right? And as a kid, like especially when you first start to find out like about loss, because it almost seems like we went off the rails there for quite a while. And you have a participation trophy, we can't keep score, like like in sports, and it's like, well, no, like it doesn't work in the real life. Like, exactly. if someone so gets a like, I don't know, like the CEO of Qantas, right, makes X amount of money a year. The guy picking up rubbish doesn't make that much money, but like all through growing up, he was told that you guys are equal. Right. Well, I'm guessing the guy who's the CEO of he put a lot of effort into his education, got himself to that point. Not to say the other person who whatever job they're doing, like hasn't put the same amount of effort in, but you've got to differentiate between what a loss is and how you can overcome from a loss. You don't just go, oh, well, we shouldn't teach anyone about loss. We won't talk about it because then everything will be okay. Well, no, that's fucking how it works.
No, exactly.
Like, you need to learn how to lose.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to overcome adversity and put yourself in positions. And I hate that participation trophy stuff.
Absolutely.
Robs people. And like you said, 17, 18-year-old that's standing there yelling and screaming at you. They've never, you've never been in a fight, mate. You have never been. And if you do get in the fight with me and you lose, you're the one that's going to be running to the police and the lawyers. And
I had a young lad one night. I won't mention the venue, but he'd obviously made a decision that he was going to urinate somewhere he shouldn't urinate. Right? And then we've had a quiet conversation on the way out. And then once we're outside, and he's got all of his mates around him. He's gotten a bit bigger, and he's he's starting to fire up. Cool, no worries. And then he's got on the phone to his dad. And his dad was a notorious person. So his dad's got on the phone, right? And then you speak to my dad, and his dad got on the phone and spoke to me. And so I've had a conversation with him and said, actions and consequences. Your son's done this, and this is the consequence. And he asked me, did you touch him up a little bit? And I won't confirm nor deny that. Right? And then he gets back on the phone and give me back to me son. So I hand the phone back over. But Dad, Dad, oh, fuck, oh God, you know, I'm sorry. And it's like, well, yeah, like, you know.
He even said sorry to you.
Yeah.
Good parenting,
like,
good parenting.
It's like, you know, like at the end of the day, you know, like obviously that kid maybe had a bit more of a sheltered life, but it was like, well, I understand this, mate. Like, yeah, you know, when I was growing up, you never walked up to a bouncer in the pub and told him to fuck off. Like, or if you did, it was a good way to lose some teeth. Like, like, yes, sir, here's my ID. Can I come inside? Generally, we were about 12 at the time, but you know, like that's how it worked. And then we morphed into a society who people lost all that respect and not necessarily to say that you know you needed to respect everybody that's out there, but like being in the army. Well, I was in the army. One thing that they talk about in the army, okay, right? You respect the rank, not the person.
Yep.
Right. Like, you know, because you might hate that person, right? But if there's someone else has had to put them in that position, you need to respect them. And I feel like, you know, teachers these days get a bum rap. You know, a lot of people pick on them, like, or kids pick on them.
They do. Yep.
And it's so like, well, hang on a second, like, you know, they've gone and got that education piece. We trust them to be able to teach you. Don't call them names. Don't disrespect them. And I was terrible as a student at school. I was probably horrible. So if any of them are listening, I'm sorry. but yeah, like you understand, you know, like you need to like respect the position that person's in, like police. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, they're just doing a job, right? And if they're within the scope of their job, you need to look out for them. You know what I mean? You need to listen to them. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a weird change in your culture, especially with this council culture stuff that's been going as well. Yeah. You know, somebody can build a platform, do all the right things for years, and then you know whatever their opinion is on something, and they get deplatformed and lose everything out of something, even if it's what they're saying is completely factually correct or a comment they made from like 20 years ago. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, oh, okay, so in 20 years that person's opinion hasn't changed? Yeah, that's right.
I'm pretty sure it might have. Like,
yeah, for sure. It's very weird. There's definitely a lack or the respect for authority has definitely dropped and diminished.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing to see. It's difficult. I mean, you look at what's happening with the US where everyone sort of, you know, any action that a police officer takes gets criticised to the nth degree, and it's like, if you put yourself in that position, let's see how well you'll do.
But that criticism is off of one negative interaction. Interaction. Okay, so now you need to envision, like, I'd love to see the statistics on how often like police in America or even in Australia pull someone over. Right? And I'd like to find out how often we're going to chuck on the front page of a paper, well, cop does job. Great job, right? Did good job, you know what I mean? Like, because it doesn't happen, but the one time, you know, the cop does a wrong thing, it's generally on the front page, and that's not to say there's not arseholes involved in every industry, because there are, right? You know, but overall, it's kind of like, well, we always seem to focus on what we don't like, and rather than go, well, you're just doing your job, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we can all agree on is that combat sports are fantastic for engendering that sense of responsibility and discipline in kids, but in all people as they grow. And as we've learnt tonight, you know, loss is really, you know, that's where we learn so much more from. It's the world we go back to, and ultimately, the more we learn to lose well and recover, it doesn't matter if it's on a big stage in a cage or whether it's just in, you know, your day-to-day life. The stronger you come back from that, the better prepared you are for the future. So thanks so much for joining us again on the Daily Combat Podcast. Thanks so much to our guest here, Greg Hearne. Absolutely fantastic, and wish you every success with all that's coming up with the DFC and more.
No worries, thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.